Oh, no. So yesterday, yeah. Yeah, it's posted. Okay, let's begin. Let's wait for Aaron. Official. How are you, official?
Baruch Hashem.
Okay.
Thank you, good Lord.
All right. We're going to start. Yep. Pardon? Yeah, there's 10 copies up there. Well, 9, 8. So, Eis Gimel, starting again Eis Gimel. Because this is where the next Arichas of the Maimon is going to go. So, Baprati, what's he talking about? He's talking about Hediyat, ordinary, quote unquote, versus holy, which is a relative term, a relative level. What's ordinary compared to a level above it can be Kodesh, removed. Kodesh means removed, transcendent, relative to the level below. And by below, we don't necessarily mean in the classic sense the next level, but within levels themselves, there's chitzonius and pneumius. So what he identified here was the way from Kloli, obviously higher than Atzilus. Atzilus is already million dead yoita, because since Atzilus, the Asara Mamoris, devolved from the Esesphiris, so the Asara Mamoris compared to the Esesphiris is million dead yoita. But even the Esesphiris compared to the Mailim Atzilus, that's the general idea, is also a million dead yoita, ordinary, finite. He spoke about Birchas Hediyat, Alti Bidjis Hediyat, Kala Ben Elcha, that Zoh. So even that last point wanted even Esesphiris of B'Shem Hediyat Legabe, relative to the Eir which is higher than Atzilus. But then, in more detail, he said everything in Torah is with derech klal uprat. Everything is relative. Everything is integrated. As we've pointed out many times, it's all integrated because it's all the expression of Hashem Echad, of one God, and therefore this truth of Hashem Echad pervades everything. It's all one. It's all interconnected. In other words, to make it very simple and clearer to understand. There was a decision of Atzmus to give rise to plurality. That's the fundamental chidush right there. Give rise to Gilui, and in the Gilui Gufa, Gilui already implies plurality, because Gilui implies revealed to something. So, Gilui, in Gilui, there's this two inyonim, Gilui, Maila and Mata, higher, lower, Bli Gvul, Gvul, Chesed, Gvura. It all comes down to these two yes, no. Gilui Helem, Oir Keli. So, throughout the entire system of Ishtaushalos, this oneness of Hashem is manifest in this fundamental plurality, which is two. The Kavanah being that all become one. And the two breaks down into endless gradations and levels as well. But at all levels you can identify two pratim, Oir and Keli, relative, Bligvul and Gvul. At every level that can be identified, relative.
In the memory wasn't not like a chesed and gvuri, it was more like the Rebbe brings zah and yesod, or chesed and yesod, which is a bit of a different dynamic than gili and Helen. It's more.
That's what I'm saying. It's at the core of it, it's not. At the core of it, it's all this dynamic, manifested in very different, complex ways. The human being is not simply a yes and a binary yes and no entity, but really comes down to that. Every level is the computer. Everything, as complex as it is, it's every question that the computer deals with is yes, no, in endless expressions. So against everything in Torah is, there's the big picture, and the same big picture is reflected in the small picture in the Prat. Again, in math, there's this formula whereby a picture, there's a word for it, whereby a picture is you stand back, it's one picture. And look, the closer you get, every detail of the picture is the picture. Repeated endlessly, smaller and smaller and smaller. Even though the picture is made up of many, there's a face, right? There's eyes, nose, ears, there's everything. All of these details, as you approach all of the details, every detail has the whole thing reflected in it. So hini b'eshes sfiras gufa, even though we said eshes sfiras before moments ago, we said that lagabe, relative to Hayd and Atzilis, eshes sfiras a million dead yoita. Now the finite infinite, that's really the two Nekudas, relative bligvul, relative gvul. So even though eshes sfiras we said that the eshes sfiras themselves are relative to Hayd and Atzilus, the million dead yoyta, the gvul, nonetheless, in eshes sfiras guf, b'chinas zo nikra hedyet, the gab b'chinas ha-moiche. In, as we explained yesterday, moiche is relatively in bligvul, doesn't have the limits at all of the midas. The whole nature of moiche is the worlds apart. One is objective, one subjective. So being objective makes you boundless relative to the subjectivity, the chains of subjectivity. But b'chinas zo guf, and in zo itself, same thing, more subtly is expressed. There's the chitzonius of the midas, which are hard and fast, as it were, and the pnimius of the midas, pnimius of Zoh, which therein the midas are much more fluid and can be expressed in endless ways. As we all know, when we speak about chitzonius and pnimius is pnimius hakavana, and chitzonius is the actuality, the way things play out. Then there's the pnimius hakavana of the external manifestation. Mendel, welcome. Do you have the Maimon, Mendel? I posted it on the Fabrengen chat, on the Chassidus chat. It's Mizmor Shir Chanukas Habayis the David, and we're Ois Gimel. You got it? Yeah, Mendel, fine. You got it?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, good. Welcome back. You just kissed if I see how its effect. Halavai on me.
Thanks.
Shezeo Gamma Havrish. Now, again, the same distinction. Again, in another model, Sheben Yesoid. In looking at Zoh, what is Zoh? Zoh from Chesed down to Yesoid. So, looking at that, first we spoke B'chalal, the Chitzonius and the Pnimius of Zoh in general. Now, more Pratim, that's a difference between Yesoid and Chitzonius Zoh. Yesoid is already the actual Ashpah. Yesoid is the Ashpah, that's the connectiveness to the Makabel. And L'bchinas HaTiferes, and what's Tiferes? Tiferes is the body, really the Pnimius of Zoh is Tiferes, as he is now going to explain. This is the outline. All right? So we understand where we're going. Let's proceed. And I'm going to ask you a favor to close the door, because they learn next door in the Shkoyach. And the matter is, in Yedua, it's known. It's known from the Zohar. Binyan Oshir lo yarbe v'hadal lo yamit. This is talking about the rich should not give more than half shekel, and the poor should not give less. First of all, this is connected to our pasuk, ki dilisani. Although there dilisani means lifted me up, it seems lifted me up from poverty. I think that's the pshat. At any rate, so but we're talking about Oshir and Dal or Ani, because that's million dead yoita, right? Ordinary, common, that's poor, and rich, relatively speaking, is the union of Kedusha. Or infinite. It's all in Kedusha itself now, but transcendent and immanence. Okay, so what's the union of Oshir and Dal? Shadal the b'chinas hayisoid. So poor goes on Yisoid. Why? V'nikra b'shem Dal. It's called poor because in Yisoid Gufa you don't see the midas begoloi. It's the result of the midas. Ikera midas chamish inun. The main midas of the five ad b'chinas hoid. Hoid is a midah. Hoid is bittul. Hoid is acknowledgement. Yisoid isn't so much an emotion as the outlet for the emotion. B'chinas Yisoid Malchus. So therefore Yisoid and Malchus. Hemachitzoinius v'yiskalulus. They're the external, and the iskalulus means the other midas are invested in them.
Respectively, or both of them have both of those?
You both, well, respectively. No, one is chitzonius, one is iskalulus. It's not if I understood it. Maybe but that's what he means. Yisoid is chitzonius, and Malchus is iskalulus, possibly, because Malchus contains with it all of the other midas. So maybe. Huh? Different from Yisoid.
And from Zah.
Yeah, and from Zah. Yeah, so I'm not sure what you're saying, right? You're saying that Chitzonius is Yisoid and Iskalulus is Malchus. Or you could be saying just both of them are the Chitzonius and Iskalulus. I'm not sure. Could be as you say. At any rate, what's the point here? That Yisoid is really outside the body, Levar Migufa, outside the body of the Midas. So that's why it's called poor, because it's a receiver, really. Yisoid is also, again, a receiver. Yisoid is the actual ashpa, but the stirring of the ashpa and the desire, etc., is all in the midas that preceded and responsible for it. Therefore it's poor. Yeah, we're clear? So Tiferes is Nikra Oshir. Tiferes is called rich. Richness, true richness. And explain now why. Tiferes shaykh l'bchinas hadas, because Tiferes is connected directly to Das. And that's Kavam Tzoi, which is the middle shaft, as it were, the middle line. Sha'oil at Bchinas Pnimius HaKesed. Das is connected to the Pnimius of Kesed. So let's just remember, again, what is Pnimius? Pnimius means, draws on the Etzem. Pnimius means the Pnimius HaKavana. So the Pnimius HaKavana, as we said before, is that plurality be united. So the plurality is expressed where on the right and the left. The right is the mashpia, the left is the mekabel, and the center is already, that's the pnimius of B'david. The pnimius hakavana is expressed there. The pnimius hakavana is there should be the unity of chesed and gevura, the unity of Eir and Keli, of gvul and bli gvul, in all of its manifestations. So therefore, all of the midas that are plotted, midas, sviras, in the center, they all have this atzmisdik property, and therefore they're oilat p'chinas pnimius hakesed. What's pnimius hakesed? Pnimius hatainuk. That's what Eibishter's inner desire is. He doesn't want division. He wants unity. We bring unity in division. Can you do it in brackets? Everybody has a place. I mean, we're following. Yeah. Can you do a shafa pisha gam chesed? I'm sorry, chachma bin shoshem yakesed. We're saying that das is connected to pnimius of Keser. What about the fact that Chachma Bina, their root is in Keser? Answer, Rahim Shayochem B'chinas Chitzonius HaKeser. Chachma Bina, they're connected to Rotzen, which is Chitzonius HaKeser. Okay, Vadas, Oile B'pnimius HaKeser. But Das, which is, what is Das? Das is connected to pnimius HaKeser because Das is about connecting, about unity. You connect to the idea, first of all. What's the idea of das? You internalize, become one with the idea, not two things. Das is Vadam Yod is Chava, connecting to Chava. Das is about connectiveness. So Chachma Bina is Chitzoni, it's the stages. The Eibishter wants unity. L'shem yichud kutchabrichu shchinte. So unity is expressive of Pnimiyas HaKavana. So Chachma Bina itself, even though they're rooted in, of course they come from Kesser, they come in a vacuum, because there's a will, therefore it sparks Chachma and then Bina. Nonetheless, therein is not the Kavana yet in Chachma and Bina. A person should learn Chassidus and file it away in his head, and he has his brilliant, and the insights of Chachma and Bina, and that's where it ends. That's not the Pnimiyas HaKavana. Kavan is das, that he internalized, connect to it, and share it. So avoiding in Oshe Bedas, that's why we find, it says, Ein Oni Elo Bedas, that's what he's referring to. There's no poverty only in knowledge, that's true poverty. So therefore, where's the true wealth? The true wealth, the lack of das is aniyas. When there is das, that's ashirus. Yeah, you follow? It's about barachas. Atochenin la'adam das. Shuhu gila eira keseh shemeir bezah. Mina pnimiyas hakeseh. So das is what carries through the pnimiyas hakavana eira keseh in the midas. Yeah? Explaining further now. The hina you do what's known. She's based on we say that midas hasvidas is two ways to plot the midas, to map the midas. Eifuna aleph, one by is shoim dim zeh tachazeh, one below the other, and that's course true. First is chachma genders bina, then comes das, etc. So when we plot them that way, we're simply plotting their order, their seder of their emergence, and therefore one is higher than the other. However, there's a different way to map, to identify the sviris. Shamidosam begimel kav.
Is perhaps the basic Hanan Seder spheres is Tayu?
No, it's not Tayu.
Even within Tikkun?
No, it's in Tikkun, it's a Seder. First comes Chachma, you have to have the Nakuda. Only then there's Bina, only then there's Das, only then can be Chesed, only then there can be Gvura, etc. As Al Rebbe explains in the Geras HaKodesh, the whole Seder of Ashpa, of a father to a son, it goes through all of these orders in that order. He loves the son, but he has to contain the Seichel, and then Proteus explains each component as one follows the other. It's a Seder. But then there's a second way, and the second way to plot them is Shamidosam Begimel Kavim. Why is that? Because when we put him in Gimel Kavim, we're not talking about the Seder, the order of what comes first so much, but rather in the Kavanah. On the right, that's the inyan of Gilui, and on the left is the inyan of Helim. And the Kavanah is the center, there should be the fusion of the two. As it goes, where do we see the difference in Das? Because again, Das is the fusion. And Das is the Pnimius. When you plot one below the other, so what is Das? Das comes below Chachma and Bina, and Das has been learned in Tanya there. That's the first way of understanding, and it's true. This is what it is. Das is what connects what? The Seichel with the Midas. If you can learn about something. If you don't connect to it, it doesn't move the heart. So the Midas, which are stirred, Chachma understands the value of something. Bina elaborates, because still the person is disconnected. The Das, we're talking about, he connects personally to the idea. Then Midas are born. That's the first oifen. So that's again the seder of how things emerge. But in the second way, hadas metachas hakeser. How does it work? You have chacham on the right, bin on the left, das in the center. So we see that there's a direct connection of that only das has with what? With keser. Yeah, not with chacham and bin. So what is this telling us? This is a different oifen of midas. This is a oifen of midas that convey the kavanah pnimius. If I'm not mistaken, where he's going to go with this is behemshach to the maamar that we learned. That there is the union of the midas as they're integrated, which is oifen of chalishus. The midas is softened by the forbearance of seichel. I don't know if you didn't know, we'll explain it when we get to it. I'm sure he's going there. That and therefore there is what? An integration of the midas. That's called because of Moishe the godless. So therefore he knows how to temper his midas and play with them and manipulate them. But then there's the deeper of it. That's the lower merkava. The higher merkava is where all the midas are betak from and nonetheless betachlis a bittul. And that's what he's speaking about here. That's when the midas are drawn from pnimius hakeser, directly from das.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are we saying that ofen habet comes after ofen aleph, or they're two different things? First, you need to have first of all ofen aleph, then you have ofen habet, or are we saying ofen habet is a thing on its own?
Based on the maamar we learned, there's a seder. There's a seder to it. First merkava, the first level of merkava, and the second one. Just to elaborate a little bit here, I'm sure he's going there, and if not, you recall from this is the maamar of what? Of Pada B'Shalom, yeah. It is kissed of maamar of Tavshin Chaf Aleph. So just to remind you, there is one way of the midas, and you brought these beautiful examples, right, of compromise. When seichel, when a person is governed by seichel, so he controls the midas. Sometimes you have to be nice, benevolent to your enemy. Sometimes the opposite. You have to be strict with the one who you love. So there's an interplay of the midas. The midas are softened. They're softened. The edges are softened so that they can work and complement each other to achieve the overall objective of what? Of the seichel. He brought all the examples he brought there. That even in judgment, when a person is on trial because he's guilty, in the course of his judgment, he's rewarded for the good things he did. At the very time that there's a general union of gvura, and there's a union of chesed, and the other examples he brought as well. Again, so why does that happen? That happens because seichel, it's objective seichel, and we want to get the job done, and so therefore, sometimes you got to kill him with kindness, or whatever other agenda. Justice means he's punished for what he did, but the good stuff he gets rewarded. We don't get caught up only in gvura. There's room for chesed as well. That's a medical level of his scholars. That's level one. But then there's a higher avodah, he says, and that's the mekorva el yoina. This is we just described now as really the natural process. It's a natural process. Moyach shalat al alev. Tanya is based on this. That the moyach, the intellect controls the heart, and so much so that the contrasting emotions can be harmonious if guided by seichel. If not, and chesed is chesed, when it's gvur, there's no room for the other one. Then there's a higher avodah. The higher avodah is when the midas are revealed b'tokfam, not filtered by seichel. In the shirish and etzem nefesh, and the midas are rooted in the nefesh deeper than seichel is. And yet, there is complete bittul. Why is that? Because the midas feel, as it were, that they are nothing other than the nefesh. So, the other midas know less nefesh than me. It's not you have to have a cheshbon to get along. So we brought the example, in shlichus, it's an example we brought, because in anything in life. There's one way from this peace and harmony. It's a seichel dikuman. I'll do you a favor, do me a favor. Pays off. The other one's atzlacha. It's just as negir as my atzlacha. It's a difference of all of the melech, all of that. That's a manefesh. So one midah betokfei completely is bottle, gives room for the other one, and it's not a stira. Because it isn't about the midah per se realizing its fulfillment. This is it's expression of the nefesh, and the opposite midah is just as much the nefesh. So this is the paradox. That this is with the midas a bit tokvam, not bechlishus, controlled by seichel. It's an atzmis dike bittul, because the bittul of the midas, and they're all very different. It's not me. This is the nefesh. The nefesh is desire to express this midah and that midah. Now the midah is the nefesh like I am. There's a complete bittul integration mitzad the midah itself, not mitzad seichel. Look, that's what he's saying again. If not, then he's not. But it seems he's going here. So how das? This is when we plot das directly to keser. What's keser? And pnimis keser we said. Das pnimis keser is etzem nefesh. And so when the etzem nefesh is brought to bear, then through das, which then produces the midas are betokvam and completely harmonious. Bittul b'mitzias. Let's see inside the Maimon. So anyway, back, David, answer to your question. It's definitely a seder. First, before a person, first you have to be a mensch, and be governed by seichel, and be in control of your midas that way. And then the greater level of bittul is when you can trust the person completely in this instinct. Instinctually, you can trust him in his raw midas, because he's be'etzim bottle. He's not just a shaykh to do anything that's bestira to the desire, the etzem nefesh, the melech, in the case of the avodim, the shliach. It's not about his post. It's about the rotzen of the melech. Okay. So let's continue. Yeah, David. Yeah? Okay. So here, even Habayis again, adas im betachas hakeser. Here we're talking about das having a direct connection. It's a higher avodah to keser and pnimis hakeser. Amshachas hamidas uleim chacham b'nei belvad. Of course, you have to the seichel. You have to understand what's valuable and what's not. But it's not only the midas don't only emerge from chacham, from seichel, which means that they're softened and they're governed, and he's a nice fella. He's a reasoned, calculated person, and he'll do the right thing because he's got his head on straight, which is wonderful. And that's the beginning of Avodah. Elu b'chenes hakeser. Here the midas are they're intense and they're drawing on keser. And das mamshich b'midas ha'oras hakeser. Das is bringing to bear to the midas this intensity of the shorish of keser. V'inyan das elia, and this is the higher level of das, not just das as it is a functionary of Chachma and Bina, but das Elian as it's connected to Pnimis HaKesed. And again, this is not just Oisius flying, because this is the Kavanah. Again, if we're talking about the center, we're talking about Pnimis, we're talking about the Kavanah. The das Elian, the Kavanah, Pnimis is not just a nice guy, but that the intensity of the midah should be b'chol tokfam and nonetheless completely bottled. The Kavanah al-Yoina is that in division, the division is respected, but at the same time, the division is completely bottled and reflective of oneness. Here we're talking about the midas receiving from Pnimis HaKeser, and here the midas are firing away as the Amitzad Etzem HaNefesh, and they're in complete integration with each other. Not compromise midas, full midas, but totally bottled. Midrash bekeser. You do a hefresh. It's not the difference between das tacht and das elyon. Where does this come from, by the way? Can anybody tell me? Everything is as a market in Mikra. Das tacht and das elyon. It's a posuk. I forgot where it was. Kel deis havaya. Simply meaning, Kel Deus Havaya, the Lord is a God who knows, whatever the Pshat Pashtus is. Huh? Right, so the simple meaning is that he knows, he is, but the remes is, and this is, I'm just laughing because, Chassidim, they say, I'm not putting myself in that category, but Chassidim Babaki and Shir Hashirim, not that they ever actually may even opened it, but look at the Torah so replete. The Shir Hashirim, they end up knowing the whole thing. Not that they shouldn't open it. Actually, the truth is that Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe were Baki in Tanakh. They used to learn every day Yeshir in Tanakh. In Hayom he brings it, no? It's in Hayom, yeah. As they folded the talis. But what I'm saying is they know, you know the pnimius of the taich, and sometimes they don't know the pasha of the taich, which is not good, because they don't appreciate the pnimius taich without the pasha of the one, and furthermore they're connected. It's not two toidas. I call upon him. So there's das tachten and das elyon. What's the difference? Mitzad das tachten. How do you die in beginnes yesh? Das tachten. The starting point is the self. The self recognizes there's an Eibishter, it doesn't come in a vacuum. Mitzad das elyon nimshach habitl. But in das elyon is that in the yesh is drawn this bitl heinish and nimshach habitl by yesh ba'oifen. So we say the das elyon is the midis abetokva, but it's coming drawn on the etzem nefesh. So the midis are b'mitziyusay, nonetheless completely bottled. One bit is not bestitted to the other, because they're all expressions equally of the etzem nefesh. How could one negate the other? There's room for all of them in their complete intensity.
Okay, we're talking about Shir, it's not about Midas, right? We're talking about the...
But both. We need it's an avodah. But he's not saying this only both. It'll only happen l'mayla when we do this in avodah down here. Otherwise, l'mayla, it's just going to be, v'chitzonius, the hierarchy. The second way of plotting it, that's really the result of our avodah. We're mamshich from pnimis hakesed. So kamoik, gam binyan amshach hasadas b'midas. Now he's talking in avodah. He just described the maila. So likewise, amshach hasadas b'midas shamitis kiyuma u'mtzapchinis hadas. The true kiyum. Now, see this. Even this is what he speaks about in Tanya in Perek Gimel. So there's kiyumim and amitis kiyumim, and the diak seems to be that stam kiyum is when you go through chachma bin das. The amitis kiyumim is when it's das as it's connected to pnimius hakeser, and that's where he says in Tanya shemekasher daita bekesher omitz, he binds himself with a very strong bound. This makes the midas endure. Okay, I'm blurring the lines a little because there in Perek Gimel he doesn't go into this distinction. On the contrary, there he speaks about the general process of producing the midas, chachma bin das. But here he's saying the higher oifen. No question. Not talking das tachten. There is the union of das tachten, the lower das. That's in the hierarchy. That's when midas are integrated because of seichel. Sometimes you got to be like this. You have an agenda, so the midas comply. The mind rules the heart. That's me speaking overtly, really, in Tanya. But he's saying that there in Tanya, he's also speaking at the higher level. Shodas elyon. Then there's a higher avodah of unity of the midas, not just because of seichel controlling it all, but rather das elyon. Nases iskalulus ba'midas, that causes iskalulus in the midas. Then it says he's not talking about iskalulus in Tanya. Tanya is talking about just producing a midah. Chesed, depending on the oifen haseichel. Here he's speaking the iskalu, the true iskalulus. That's not only from das elyon, the true iskalulus. Here we're talking about the midas and their full strength, and yet not in opposition, a complete bittul and harmony. Why? Drawn on pnimis hakeser etzem nefesh. Oh, Bada b'shalom, which is barely yell. Like we said before, I just looked at this, and as you can see, didn't properly prepare. My apologies. But Baruch Hashem, we're on track. It's clear. As we said before in Bada b'shalom, there's different ways in the integration of the midas. Yes, the lower level is this makor v'tachtoina. It was all to explain why the avos are called merkava. When l'chayre the avos and neshamas atzilus and the bitlas machaya. It's explained because it's taka two levels of makava. And the makava elyoina. And that's what we're talking about here. The lower level is there is a level of integration where all the midas are integrated with the other ones. Chesed is included all the midas. It's in pashtus. If you love something, so you fear to be distant from it. It's natural. So there, what happens there is the union of Yira Gvura is subordinate to Chesed. You love, therefore you're afraid to lose it. But that's not B'chol Tokfa. That's not talking about each midah B'chol Tokfa. Not because it's a result of, the flip side of the Cheshbon of Chesed. Or because you fear something, you love to be far away. That's Chesed Shebegvura. Like Gvura 2, that Shebechesed Atzma Klul Mikol HaMidas, Gvura itself has all the other midas in it. So this is Shehu in Iskalus Midas. This is all the integration of the midas. It's not just 10 times 10, 100. As you go deeper and deeper, they're all interwoven. Beautiful. This Iskalus happens because one midah is weakened by Seichel. You love, Seichel says, you have to be afraid to lose it, so be careful. The true Iskalus of the midas, what we're talking about now, that's Das Elyon. Not the functional Das of Das Tachten, but Das Elyon, which reveals Pnimis HaKavana. Pnimis HaKavana is not to be just a nice guy. And all of your midas are nice and integrated, you're appropriate. It's not just being about appropriate. It's about being crazy. The midas were talked from. But being crazy, not in a way that's harmoniously crazy. Crazy in such a way that there's room for the other person's craziness just as much as yours. Because that's the kavanah. The Melech wants everything. What could mean? Another example of that is that when it comes, each yomtiv, each yomtiv is a different simcha, a different avodah. Yeah? So if the avodah is only mitzvah the first level, he's not very different in each avodah. It's all a seichel dike cheshbon. Today is Zan Simchaseinu, okay, Zan Simchaseinu. Yom Kippur is Chatas Yavisi, Rosh Hashanah is Malchus. There's no intensity, There's a midah there. It's definitely emotionally engaged, but it's engaged mitzad the seichel. It's integrated. It's not going crazy. But mitzad das pnimis hakavana, when the midas are born mitzad das elyon, which means that the Eibishter wants. Now simcha, it's what the Eibishter wants. Now it's thinking of charata, and now it's in of gvura. Then it's but each engagement, it's b'chol takvi. Look, he's a meshugana. He was like this, like that. Who are you? The first Eifan, you don't think he's crazy. You see, he's a controlled person. Now it's appropriate to be b'simcha. Now it's appropriate to be Tisha B'Av on the floor. He's appropriate.
Kind of like in learn Rabbi's Maamar for any given yontif.
Huh?
If you learn a Maamar for any given yontif, it kind of seems like, okay, this yontif must be like the most important one and the deepest one, because it comes out in each one.
Right, because the Kavon Del Yoina is all of the Eibishters now in this moment, and all of the Eibishters in this moment, and all of the Eibishters in this moment. So it's betokvei. It's not a reasoned, calculated, emotional response. First day of Sukkot is Chesed, second day is Gevura, and it's an intensity. Okay, we'll stop here. I guess no story today. Where he went? My apologies. Okay, we're getting somewhere a little bit. Okay. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Shkoyach. Thank you.